he did, and then maybe reach out to Juice or reach out to someone else.
Gotcha.
Because there's value in your existence. To me, there's value in your existence before any of this other shit. So I'm just like, oh no, this is dope. You made that podcast. I was like, nah, bring that man on. Have him come talk. Let them know what he did. And then like, I think you have great habits, and I've seen you grow.
Oh, me?
Yeah, no, I've seen you grow.
Come on, gang.
No, I'm dead ass. I've seen
too.
you grow. So like, I'm proud of what you decided to do with your platform. Because I tell people, just because you built something doesn't mean you need to be honest. You just need to have built the thing.
Nah, for sure.
So, when it comes to the Gin Poppy podcast, what value do you bring to the community?
Well, I'm out of the community now.
Okay.
I think...
You took a break or you wrapped it up?
I'm still trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. Because I think I'm in a place where, you create something, mm-hmm. and a lot of people have created something, mm-hmm. so you think you got lost in the space.
Yeah.
But we talked about this before, like, everybody didn't create the thing you created.
Yeah.
We all had the podcast, but your perspective, your podcast isn't what everybody else created. So there's a balance that I'm trying to find in, like, I want to do this thing that I know is like the thing, but I also want to do it my way and the right way. Mm-hmm. That balance is really hard to find though, because of the convoluted space that I'm in and the way that people are handling their versions of it. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do I break through? Because I'm doing the thing, but if you don't actually click, I look like the rest of them. So breaking through the noise part is the part that I'm stuck at right now, or the part that I'm trying to figure out. But to answer the question, what I brought to it at the time and what I want to bring to it if I ever get back into it was, like I said, we were joking with the podcast in the beginning. We were just trying to shoot the shit. Yeah. The more that I realized, oh wait, people are listening to me. People are paying attention to me. Mm-hmm. It's like the Spider-Man thing. Like, oh, I got responsibility for real now. Mm-hmm. So like, I can use this platform to actually talk to people, actually help people. Mm-hmm. Now we can still joke, we can still have fun, but we can still have these conversations that we are all having. Mm-hmm. So there are very much situations where it was like, okay, we're going to talk about some fun shit, but we also need to make sure that we touch on like why this is not okay. Mm-hmm. Or why we feel this way. Like we had the Fuck Steve Harvey episode. Mm-hmm. Joking around, Steve Harvey was talking about men and women can't be friends, blah 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 blah. Mm-hmm. So we played with it, but also while we're having fun and we're joking and shit, we also need to talk about why that's a problem. Yeah. Why this type of rhetoric is very much not what we need in the community, especially from someone who has kind of put himself at the top, talking not down to, but talking to the people from like the heights. Yeah. Like, oh, I made it up here. Mm-hmm. You can be like me, but spewing bullshit from the top is like, oh, wait, maybe he's right because I'm looking up. Yeah. So we're going to have fun, but we also want to break down these things, try to help people get to these situations and have these conversations in not a serious way, but there are very serious undertones to these conversations.
What's the weight behind your words being listened to and valued by people?
I realized that like when you're just doing something for fun, you can kind of get lost in the fun and not ever hit the message. Yeah. So in the beginning it was like, oh, we just having fun, we just talking shit. But the more that I was doing it, I was like, oh wait, there's a message here that's important that we get that out before we finish, before we wrap, before we cut the episode. So I remember it was probably maybe about 10 or 15 episodes in, I was like, oh, I need to make sure that this is kind of like an Aesop fable. Like, we're going to have the fun, we're going to tell the story. When I get to the end, though, I got to let you know. So in closing, like, but don't forget, after all that we said, this is why we had this conversation, because there's a grand point here. And also just trying to, like, shed light on maybe some things or a perspective that people weren't really thinking about. And trying to bring people in to balance that perspective. Like, I want to have conversations about like, oh, dating and relationships, but I don't just want to sit with all of my niggas and be like, hey yo, what's wrong with dating? Because now we're all just talking to each other about dating, but it's just us. Yeah. So like, okay, maybe actually call like some of my lady friends, let's sit in, let's go back and forth, let's have the conversation. And it was good to have people that I had relationships with, because I know we're not yelling at each other or yelling into the void. Like, I'm just talking to you like I would talk to you about any other time.
Yeah.
And I thought that was important. Because, like, sometimes we can very much get into, like, a debate where we're just butting heads and not trying to fix the problem. So, it was little things like that I realized, like, oh, I'm actually saying stuff in these. Like, it's not just us sipping and talking shit. Like, there are actually points in here. And I need to make sure that I highlight those points. And if people are hearing, I need to make sure that these points are made clear. So I can't just be on bullshit. I actually need to.
That's right.
Yeah, so.
Did you ever have to purposely learn to see the other person's perspective?
I don't think I had to, because that's kind of how I try to live my life on a day-to-day.
Yeah.
I'm very much, I have my idea of it, but I'm going to try to see the other side as well. And if you bring me something, whether I agree or disagree, like I'm not necessarily going to be the devil's advocate, but I will still very much be like, hey, we can't all lean to one side. Are we looking at it from this side as well?
Yeah.
So whether it's right or wrong, you don't necessarily have to say I'm with you, but can I see where you're coming from a little bit? All right, maybe. So it's very much like a let me hear you out. I might not stand on that side, but let me hear you out, see what you have to say.
Yeah.
Because I already had that in my nature, I think it made it a lot easier in podcasting and just talking to people, because when I'm in the room and everybody's going back and forth, I can help both try to see the point. It was easier for me to host as not picking a side and being like, oh yeah, my guests are wrong, or oh yeah, my co-hosts are correct. It was like, that was a good point.
Yeah. Just the
I get it. That was kind of. Come on, you know that. So I think that helped me a lot in my hosting podcast when I'm bringing people on that I know are for sure not on the same side. So it's like, okay, I kind of see where you're coming from, but also, come on, we can't ignore this. We can't ignore that.
Do you ever see yourself bringing what you've learned from the podcast side of things into your real life when it comes to the conversations and striking a balance?
I think that it was the other way.
Okay.
I very much brought my real life to the podcast, and I think that's what made it easy for me, because I'm just in here being myself.
Yeah.
That's why I started the podcast. That's why people told me to start the podcast. So it's like when I'm in the room and I'm in my bag, this is how I just handle the table.
Yeah.
Like I just be at the table like, hey, what you think about? Start the conversation. And now I'm just moving the pieces around.
Yeah.
So I think I brought that to the podcast as opposed to the podcast outside. Now there were times where it was like I was using the podcast as an avenue for something that was going on in my real life. So it was like, okay, cool, I heard y'all. Now I'm gonna go out here and use what we talked about. What we talked about in my real life. But as far as like how I handle the conversations, how I handle situations and people, I think it was the opposite. Like I'm coming in here as Cortez, Gin Poppy, and this is how I usually handle it. Now we just flip the mics on. Okay. Now let's talk about it.
Is there an anxiety that comes with stopping something that you've put so much momentum into?
Yeah. You get to a place where I think I'm trying to figure out, I did this thing and I know that I liked it.
Yeah.
But sometimes things do come to an end for something else to happen. And I think at that middle point, it's very much like, did I stop too early or did I stop right on time? Or should I not have stopped at all?
Okay.
But that also goes back to what I was telling you about keeping it even. Like I try to, even when I think back on it, like when I miss it or I'm like, or a picture pops up like, oh yeah, I did that. It's never like, oh, I got to start it back up, or oh, I failed it. It was just like, okay, we had this moment. I don't know when we're going to get to the other side, but when we get there, we'll be ready for it. Something will happen where I'll know like, okay, I need to do this again, or I need to bring it back, or I need to, or just be like, okay, we did that. We had a great run. Did we have to do? People got their enjoyment out of it. I met some cool people doing it, so I can leave it at, that was the good.
Yeah.
I've got all the good. It worked out, and I'm content in that. I'm cool with that.